Gotta get the socks ready.
Oh my god.
We know how important that is, Kathy. Hey, what's going on? This is Scott at Scott Doty TV. Thanks for watching today. I really appreciate your time. Today we'll be talking with my good friend and colleague, Kathy Acosta.
Hello.
Kathy and I have worked together for a number of years here at BrainStorm, and she is our resident expert on today's topic, which is a topic I think that is really important for everyone to become acquainted with and become aware of, whether it affects them directly with their children or not. So today we'll be talking about the topic called learning disabilities, learning disorders. A lot of people talk about the various learning issues some students face and the diagnosis for those, and how to treat them and understand them and to work with them, and how to best equip their students for success given the situation, and to encourage their students. And it's a very important topic, and I want to give you some tools today to help your family, to help your students in whatever way possible. In this case, it's for students with learning disabilities. So if this affects your child, or if you have friends who have students with learning disabilities or disorders or learning impairments or processing disorders or whatever it might be, behavioral disorders, I hope you'll pass this video to them, and I hope it's a help to you. Let's start just by getting to know our guest. Hi, Kathy.
Hello.
So, Kathy, we've been together for how long now?
6 years this week.
Man, it's a long time.
You're lucky.
I'm so lucky. It's so true. So I know that you're awesome, but they don't know you. So just give them a quick overview, please. What's your background in education, working with students with special learning needs, etc.
So, like you said, I've been with BrainStorm for a long time now, 6 years. So I started tutoring, and I actually was also getting my master's in social work. And that's where I met your mama.
That's right. You did meet my mama.
So interning, I actually was working with kids that have special needs.
Okay.
So Asperger's, ADHD, emotional disorders, just a combination. So from there, that's where I got some of my experience when I started. And then in my internship, I actually worked on special needs cases through Fordham. They have a law clinic, and at the law clinic, we actually went into the schools, talked to the families, and won some cases. That's where I got a lot of my experience learning about the law background, what I need to know when helping clients or advocating for clients.
Advocating, got it. Now, in the last few years, you've started something in BrainStorm called SAC.
Yes.
We'll talk about it more later, but give me a quick sense of what that stands for. What's that about?
So SAC is Specialized Academic Coaching.
Okay.
So what that is, we have at BrainStorm tutors that I've actually interviewed, handpicked, that work with kids that have either special needs, learning difficulties, behavioral issues, whatever it is, and they are either reading specialists or they're teachers, or some of them are actually therapists that work with the population. And they also have a background with teaching, whether it's English, math. They all have kind of their own specialization.
So they'll help families in this area with students with special needs of any kind. They'll do private sessions with them, I guess?
Yes, private session.
Let's kind of step back for a minute and talk about learning disabilities and disorders generally. Like, let's say, assume I'm ignorant, and I need you to teach me some things, okay? I understand that there are two different kinds of disorders or disabilities that people will talk about in the education systems. They'll put them in categories of learning disorders or behavioral disorders.
Yes.
And can you give me a quick sense of how those are different, and what are some examples of each?
Sure. So a learning disorder is actually something that is neurologically stopping a child from learning. So whether it's dyslexia, so it's associated with reading, or if it's something that is with math, it's in the brain. So in the brain, something's stopping them, the way they process information.
Okay, got it.
So that is a learning disability.
And that's innate. They're born with it, and it's not something that they got over time.
Exactly.
It's always okay.
Yes.
Got it.
A behavioral disorder, behavioral issue, that's a little bit different. That's something like an obsessive compulsive disorder. So something that it's an action that you're doing, you're obsessed with it, it's a compulsive behavior, or something like anxiety.
Okay.
Those are two examples of a behavioral disorder.
And a behavioral disorder is not innate? Is that something that they will learn from nurture? From their environment? They've learned it over time? Or could it be that they were born with it?
I mean, I guess that's the great debate, right? So if it's something that they were born with, or did they learn it over time? And anxiety, sometimes you can say that that's something that they learned. They became a little bit more anxious. Maybe there are people in their family that are a little bit more anxious, and they learned how to cope that way. So that would be more of a behavioral.
Sure. So I've heard of things like autism, Asperger's, the spectrum. I've heard about ADHD or ADD. So are those learning disorders? Are they behavioral disorders?
There's mixed, right? Some people will say that they're more of a behavioral, some or will say that they're more of a learning, but I would say that most of those are behavioral, especially ADHD.
Okay.
But some people will say, well, my son was born with ADHD. But so there's a behavioral component to it.
So there is some debate there, a little gray area. And so if I talk to different experts, they might give me different opinions. With the idea of neurological disorders and some things that are, I'm born with them, some things maybe I've learned over time, and some of them might be behavioral as distinct from learning.
Yes.
But either way, my performance in school can be impacted by this.
Yes,
negatively.
definitely.
Another thing I want to ask you about is, okay, let's say I wonder if my child has a learning disorder or a behavioral disorder. I don't really know, I'm not an expert, but I've seen some behavior, it just makes me wonder. What are the benefits of diagnosis? Is it really important that, we go see a specialist and do all this, or are there some indicators, maybe just at the house, that I should pick up on that should give me a sense, like, yeah, your son might have this need?
So I think the biggest indicator is your child struggling in school, right? So are the teachers telling you something?
Okay.
I would talk to the teachers, see if reading's an issue. Do they not like reading? Are they saying they don't want to write things? So I think parents, your own observations will tell you. And a lot of times you'll say, I have a gut feeling something's going on. And that's when I think you should talk to your teachers or talk to a specialist or get some sort of assessment or take the assessment that they do at school and look at those and talk to your doctor. I think that parents know when something's going on. So talk to your kids. Ask them what's going on in school. Do you like school? Or what's your favorite thing about school? Just having a conversation with them will really help. Your child's best advocate. So find out what's going on.
You sort of seem to be saying go with your gut a little bit, but also do some interacting with this child. So for me, I would say, hey James, my son, let's sit down and let's read together. And I might notice that he's struggling in a way that isn't commensurate with his age. Maybe he should be reading better or something like this at this age, right? Or his numeracy is struggling. I mean, is it possible that my son could be getting A's in school, doing fine in school, and yet he does have a learning disorder? Or is it possible that he's struggling, but it's not because of a behavioral disorder, he's just hasn't learned good study habits yet, and he needs to be a better, harder worker?
All of that is possible, right? It just depends on the child. Some students, based on their age, some are younger for their grade, some are older for their grade. You also have to look at that as well. So it's not just the grade level, it's their age. And some kids take a little more time to mature or to want to learn certain things. So I think it also depends on that. So yes, it's possible that your child is getting an A, but it's still a struggle.
I just want to make sure that I'm not the parent who's overly concerned and I see a small hint of maybe a delay and I go, I gotta see an expert. Like, should I freak out and be nervous about this, Or how do I know, like, no, this is really interesting, really important, and he's got to go. You're just saying that the main mechanism I can use is just interacting with my child, just talking with the child.
Yes.
And what kind of questions might I ask him, or how would I get to the bottom of it?
There are no specific questions. I'd say talk to them about school. Talk to them about reading. Talk to them about their interests. It's just that communication with your child to find out what's going on. And the teachers, they're your best resource. They're the ones that see your child for 7-8 hours a day, and they have a lot of information on your child. Or just if you start doing work with them, if you're doing the homework with them, you can tell if something's going on. So study habits. Maybe it is just teaching a study habit, or maybe it just is reading more, right? Okay. But until we do these things, we don't know.
So the thought might be, if I'm at all concerned about it, where I might begin, based on what is under my control, is I can say to my student, hey, you know what, let's read together more, let's talk together more. And after doing that for a while, I still see struggle, maybe there's something else I should look into.
Definitely.
Something like that. Let's say that I have done all the work, and I have had my son or daughter diagnosed, and my son has autism, he's somewhere on the autism spectrum, or my daughter has been diagnosed with ADHD. Okay, just as examples. So what happens now? Like, in other words, how do I help my child? I want to give him resources or her resources through, maybe a tutor or a specialist or a coach, a therapist, but also, at the home, what are some things that I can do to be helpful? And, what are some things that I should know about in terms of, how does it affect the student with his self-concept and identity, and how can I be part of the conversation with him to be helpful?
A couple of things. I would say, whatever strategies or tip you get from a doctor or a therapist or a tutor, I'd say be consistent. You have to actually try this and be consistent with it. You want to make sure that strategy definitely works or definitely doesn't work. Okay. Because you're figuring out now what works for your child.
So I had to commit to it for a while.
Exactly.
Okay.
2, I would say, bring your child into the conversation. In my experience talking to a lot of students, it's, well, my mom's making me do this.
So the mom or the dad seem into it, and the child's not.
Yeah.
And why?
Not every child's going to say, yes, I want tutoring, or, oh yeah, take me to the doctor, I want to see my therapist every single week. However, if it's explained why, or if they make the decision together, or if they know what ways it can actually benefit them now and in the future, that might be a different story. If you get a diagnosis of ADHD or of Asperger's or autism, whatever it is, talk to your child. If they can really understand what's going on with them, why is it different, not to use it as an excuse or a crutch, but you say, okay, this is something that's part of me, and how am I going to work with this?
That's an interesting point, this idea. I can imagine if I were a student and I was told I have some disorder, I would become, I would identify with it suddenly. I would become that thing. I am my ADHD, this is who I am. And so you're saying don't use it as a crutch, but you should still be aware of what it is. You know, have you found in your coaching of students that it's an important piece to say, okay, I'm going to teach you how to not make this the centerpiece of your identity?
Yes.
You know, and how do I do that? That seems important.
Yes. That piece of my coaching I call kind of the psychoeducational piece. So I am educating you on your ADHD, on your dyslexia, whatever it is. Because I truly believe that anyone has to understand what they have first before they can do anything with it. They can't say I can't. That's a word they can't use when they're with me. I can't doesn't exist, right?
Okay.
It's I can do it in a different way than other people. But we're going to figure out the way that you can do it. Because you can do it, it's just maybe not like your friend. But you're going to learn it your way.
Your way. But you are going to learn it.
Yes.
I also liked, when we were talking ahead of this recording, I liked you were making points about, the idea of not comparing yourself to others. So you're touching on that now. But
Yes.
I know I'm a big fan of a topic called the growth mindset versus fixed mindset. And one of the centerpiece ideas of that is that you only compare yourself to yourself.
Yes.
And is that especially important for students with learning disorders?
Yeah, I believe that's really important because you're learning how to learn your way. Now, with going into a little bit about what we do for coaching is I really believe that you have to look at your strengths and use those, not your weaknesses. Also, you have to figure out what's the best way you learn. We do a lot with learning styles. So if you're a visual learner, we're going to take your learning style and your strengths, combine that, and that's the best way you learn. So sometimes in a classroom, you have to modify what you're doing based on your teacher's teaching style. Or if you get a test and you have to study for it, well, your teacher gave you the study guide that's really, it's not going to help you study. So we're going to figure out how are you going to study for this test.
So tell me a little bit more about SAC. You mentioned earlier specialized academic coaching.
Yes.
You mentioned you have a team on board with you. How many are on the team?
Right now we're about 12.
12 people. And what will give you a sense of the things that they can do?
We have special education teachers on staff that with 25 years experience that are reading specialists. They have Orton Gillingham or Wilson trained for reading. We have therapists on staff which also have a background with special needs, maybe with anxiety, behavioral issues. They focus mainly on study techniques and coping techniques for those behavioral issues. We have psychologists on staff. They have their specialization, which is special needs, or they're a therapist, and maybe they know a lot about Asperger's or anxiety or ADHD. We also make sure that we hire coaches that really have a focus. Okay,
so I think I have a good feel for what you said so far about learning disabilities generally, learning versus behavioral disabilities and disorders. But maybe if you wouldn't mind again, just clarify again or enumerate for me. What are some of the things that SAC will do for students? And do you do any certain assessments, interventions? Just give me a sense a little bit again about the things you do and how you do it a little bit.
Sure. So I guess the best way to answer that is it depends on what the student needs. So if the student needs an assessment, I can do my own assessment because I am an LCSW. So I can do my assessment, my kind of preliminary diagnosis. But if they want a full diagnosis, I can refer them to where they can get a full diagnosis. On top of that, we do academic or educational assessments where we can do the core subjects. And that's a clinical Pearson test. And we do that on the iPad. It's very interactive. So when it comes to models and interventions, it's customized. It's on their individual needs. So if it's dyslexia, then I would ask for a reading specialist to work with that child. Now, if it's more of anxiety and something that they need some behavioral modification, I maybe would ask would match them up with a coach that can do some CBT or something like that.
Okay.
Probably a therapist. I do my own assessment with each family, and then I match them with the coach that's appropriate for them.
One more quick technical question, and then I'll just do a sort of a wrap-up, big picture question. I've understood that we have these terms IEP and 504.
Yes.
How exactly are they different? What are they?
Each one is a plan, right?
Okay.
And a plan that they enforce in school. Both of them, different laws are the ones that enforce them. The IEP, there are very strict laws and rules that the school must follow if they are going to put an IEP in place. So if the school doesn't follow it, they kind of can get in trouble. With the 504 plan, it's something that they put in place that the school has to follow as well, but it's not as strict. I'm not going to say there's one better than the other. It really depends on the child's need. So a 504 plan, someone with a medical disability or medical issue of some sort, they can go on a 504 plan.
That might be like, I broke my leg.
No. I broke my leg is very temporary. It has to be something that is going to interfere in their academics, everyday life. Something that's just permanently will interfere. Yeah. They get very tired in school. They need frequent breaks. That would be a 504 plan.
And it's medically related.
Yes.
Okay.
But there are other reasons why some students that have ADHD, they get 504 plans as well. It just depends on the evaluation and what information you have to back it up to justify one or the other.
I see. And then a person who uses SAC or uses you, they can give you some ideas about the diagnosis that they've received, whether they've been put on a 504 versus an IEP, and what the implications are, and how to advocate for the right plan for your son. Like, that's something that you can help people kind of navigate a little bit.
Exactly, and that comes from the advocacy piece. So we do some of that as well. Some of my families, they don't have an IEP or 504 before they start with us, but we help them through that process.
Yeah, I got it. Okay, well, listen, I mean, there's a lot more to say about the topic, but I know we don't have a ton of time. But I want to ask you just maybe a last, big picture question. You and I have worked together for a while, and we love the work we do. We love helping students in a myriad ways. And I know one thing we've talked about is that idea that everyone's brilliant. Every person is brilliant in his own way. And so I just wanted to get a last feeling from you about working with kids who have these special needs. I just wanted to ask, what is it about working with that population that you love so much? Why is it that that's something that you've been drawn to? And, and what have you seen? Any really amazing, results or feedback that you've gotten that makes you feel like, this is what you want to do?
So I guess it goes back to what we were saying before, building that confidence and helping a student learn what's the best way for them to learn. So if I can help a student figure that out, then I think I met my goal. So I think that's what really pushes me to do this, because I don't want it to be a crutch for kids. I don't want it to be something that they don't understand and they just have. Let's understand it, let's work with it, and let's figure out how you can use this to your advantage and where your strengths lie. So if you figure all of that out, then I did my job.
Well, that's great. I know you do great work. Thank you for it. And so thank you for tuning in today to Scott Doty TV, spending some time with my friend Kathy Acosta, who is telling us a little bit about learning disabilities and about BrainStorm's specialized academic coaching, right, SAC program. If you have more questions for us, please leave them below on the page. Let us know what you thought about this video. In the meantime, we wish you the best. Thank you for tuning in again, and we'll see you next time on Scott Doty TV.
Bye.
Ciao.